Hey, everybody, how's it going? Thanks for joining us for another Church of True Christ Sunday ministry. We hope all of you out there are having an amazing and happy Sunday, a great weekend. So let's start off with of course, the Lord's Prayer, direct from Aramaic translation. If you all will just take a minute of silence as we go through this. O birther, father, mother of the cosmos, you create all that moves in light. Focus your light within us, make it useful, as the rays of a beacon show the way. Unite our eye kin to yours, so that we walk as kings and queens with every creature. Create in me divine cooperation from many selves, one voice, one action. Grant what we need each day in bread and insight. Forgive our hidden past, the secret shames, as we consistently forgive what others hide. Deceive neither by the outer nor the inner. Free us to walk your path with joy. From you is born all ruling will, the power and life to do. The song that beautifies all, from age to age, it renews. Amen. Awesome, guys. So today we are talking about the Christ within the age of Aquarius, on how we can, in a lot of ways, embody Christ in this age, and we can bring heaven to earth. You know, we've heard this saying so many times, how, bring heaven to earth. That's one of our biggest jobs here during this remembering and this awakening that we're all undergoing on this planet at this time. And we often ask ourselves, what does it mean to do this? What does it mean to bring heaven to earth? Well, I am going to start off with bringing up the Gospel of Thomas. And of course, we've talked about the Gospel of Thomas a lot on this show before. And, the kingdom of God and the kingdom of heaven is within you and without you. And that's how we're going to start this. At least for me, one of the biggest things we can understand when it comes to bringing heaven to earth is our external existence is a mirror of our internal one. We look at that phrase, the kingdom of God is both within you and without you. Hey, good to see you, Sophia. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. And so if the kingdom of God is within you and without you, we understand that the kingdom of God is all. And we talk about how the all is mind, and we take that and we channel it into our divine focal point that we are here, and we understand that this is, in at least my eyes, a good way to bring heaven to earth, is to understand that your external existence mirrors your internal one, and through the healing that you do internally, you are going to see this shift happen and occur within your external existence. I did a post yesterday on X that said perspective is everything. It said stop viewing everything as an apocalypse and start viewing everything in a way to create heaven on earth. So this is, I think, one of the biggest key things when it comes to bringing heaven to earth, is understanding the mirror of our existence. We have the external mirroring the internal. When we shift our gears and we focus on healing the internal and bringing Christ into our internal existence, and we can see that manifest outward into our external existence as well. I will hand it over to Diana. What does it mean to you to bring heaven to earth?
Well, to bring heaven to earth, and it's what Thoth says it in the Emerald Tablets, that it's our mission to bring the spirit into physicality. And he says it in a poetic way. I'm paraphrasing here, but our job, and when I first fully got that, I was literally, because I'm a bit like Luciferian, and the fact that I want to take matter and go to spirit. But no, Thoth, who is potentially Lucifer, depending on what you think. A lot of evidence is coming out Thoth is Lucifer or part of the same being. David was saying that Lucifer just might be a bunch of beings, the light bringers, right? But anyways, we are to bring spirit into matter. And that's scientific too, when you get into the quantum layer of things. So we, given like our middle pillar, our chakras that continue up, like you don't just have 7, you have an infinite amount, but 12 is actually a graspable number that we can all attach to going out into the cosmos. So when we get these links online, like a computer stream, when we get these links online and we open up the crown into the higher chakras, and likewise open the lower chakras down, they go and they seed right into the core of Earth, and they go up and they seed right into the core of our galaxy and beyond. So if you think about it, when we are actually online fully embodied in the fullest potential we can have, that is naturally taking the highest of the high and seeding it down into the most physical of the physical. And then that's our job, and we birth that into more spirit, into more matter. So the spirit becomes matter because of us. But doing those, it kind of goes hand in hand, because I've realized, when fully encompassing this wisdom, that this doesn't mean we don't get to grow and become star seeds. This doesn't mean we're stuck dead.
Oh no! Why?
I know. Oh God, she was getting to a really good part. Well,
That star seed. I had this happen when she was on my show a couple of times. I just tried to remember the last word she was on as a verbal cue, because
there we go.
Yeah, what was the last
She's
word
back.
I was on?
Star seed. There you go.
Okay, yeah. So our mission as star seeds is to create that connection, and then we turn matter into more physical, and that is that process we hear about, the fifth dimension. It's a lot more complicated than the old way of putting it, and we keep graduating and graduating into higher bandwidths of understanding, and likewise being able to teach it and then embody it and integrate it, which is all part of the process of creating matter as more physical. So that's getting into things like the cities and the powers that will come to us. So it doesn't mean we're stuck in physicality. It means that when we birth the spirit into matter, we become more magical. It's kind of the same thing we've always been hoping to do. We're just getting more awareness on the actual process of how this works. This is why this is a new Church of Christ, because when we embody the new and even scientific way of understanding this, we see what we're doing is very real. It's very foretold. It's we are right on cue. In fact, we're a little bit ahead of schedule. We've skipped a lot of the cataclysms that were meant to happen. It can seem like things are chaotic right now, but that's just all of the process of birthing spirit through matter. So we are getting more etheric in our nature, but we are still meant to stay physical, because apparently we've never been fifth dimensionally physical to this degree, where we started low and went high. They've had it where they started high, trickled down. They haven't had it where they started low and went up. And that's why one of the reasons why we are so important as humans.
Absolutely. I like that. Don, what about you, man? What does it mean to you to bring heaven to earth?
Well, both of what you've been saying absolutely resonates, and I just kind of want to run parallel to what Diana was saying, and I think it may even pick up where she stopped there. Is, to me, it's an emotional state of bliss that allows you to pass through the frequency of this embodiment. And the higher the connection to source creator, the easier the travel through this reality is. And it would almost become euphoric or heaven like when you reach that flow state and you're divinely connected, as Diana was saying. Right? It is all an emotional vibration that you're going to reach in order to ascertain your own personal heaven here on earth.
I dig it. I like how we all kind of had we essentially all kind of said the same thing, but in a different way. That was pretty interesting. If you don't mind, because Diana brought it up, I think this is something a good topic we should touch on, because I feel like a lot of modern Christians, especially when they hear Lucifer, it sends like a visceral sensation through them, because if you look at the modern Christian canon and the way Lucifer is depicted in modern Christianity, Lucifer is Satan. But we've come to find, when we dig a little bit deeper and we don't just take everything we hear at face value, we come to understand that, at least in Lucifer actually has a very reciprocal relationship with Christ. Lucifer is still an angel in heaven. There's a lot of Bible verses that point to this. As far as who the actual Satan is here, we all have our opinions and speculations. I do think it goes by the name of Yaldabaoth. It does not go by Lucifer. But getting back to the reciprocal energy, we see Lucifer is, a lot of the times, he's a tester of humanity. He is the tester. He tests us. He gives us these tests. A good example of how Lucifer works with us is like, let's say like you're walking down the street, right? And somebody just decides to come up to you and be an asshole to you for no reason. And Lucifer's the one who comes in and goes, all right, Steve, so like you have two choices. Like you can just let that roll off your back and understand that guy needs some healing, and probably needs to do a little bit of work on himself and not let it bother you. Or you can turn into fuck around and find out Steve and go back and combat him with what he just had. So that's kind of like a good example, like an everyday example of how Lucifer works with us. But Lucifer being the tester, one of the biggest things about humanity is, in order to grow, we have to be tested. We don't just, and I even brought up this question. Was a question I brought up as well, is that if you were born into complete and utter bliss and peace, at least here in the physical, obviously in the spiritual, it's a little bit different. But if you were born into complete bliss and peace from the get-go and you never experienced anything else, could you truly appreciate that peace? Would you even know how to appreciate what you have if it's all you've ever experienced? So this is kind of where we see this reciprocal energy between Lucifer and Christ. We go through these trials and these tribulations as we complete our great work here on this planet. We're tested, we're pushed. We might encounter certain scenarios. We might see the darkness of this world and all of its facets. But what this does is it pushes us towards Christ. Through these tests and trials, we are pushed into the light. We are pushed into the divine light of Christ. And so that's one of the things I know Diana's got a lot to say about this as well, for sure. But this is something I just kind of wanted to dispel because, whenever we hear the name Lucifer, whenever we hear that, we always get this internal visceral sensation like we're dealing with the absolute evil, or the evilest of evil, when in all reality, we're not. We have to understand what this energy is and how it works through us. In order to really gain a foundation of seeing this reciprocal relationship between Christ and Lucifer. Jay, what's up, man? Thanks for being here. Satan is the prosecutor for the archons. Lucifer is the morning star, aka Jesus. Yaldo is the archon god. Maybe. I don't know. I know, man. Everybody's got their own little take on it. That's just what I think. But Diana, let's hear your thoughts on Lucifer and Lucifer energy, and let's get some clarification on that for everybody.
And it's funny, Jay's point there, because one of the first questions I asked you, because I was really in that moment when we met, and we did one of our first podcasts, is Lucifer and Christ the same person? Because I was coming to that, but I don't think so. And I think they actually make their own holy trinity. And I like to think of them as like three dysfunctional brothers. And I have a bunch of siblings, and we're always like, we used to be more like that. We've kind of separated more now, but still a little bit like that. And we'd like pair off, especially us three sisters. We would like, two of us would be besties and talking about the other one minute, and then they'd be besties talking about me the next minute. And then I think of Lucifer, Christ, and Satan as the same thing because they can each pair together. And then you usually have a relationship that's more incongruent than the rest. And that would be Christ and Satan. Because Satan can get along with Lucifer. Lucifer is kind of the better brother that gets along with both of them just fine. And because Lucifer is that fully spirit. And Satan is fully material. So fully material. And then Christ is the middle pillar. So even if you're looking at the tree of life in Kabbalah, they have the two pillars and then the middle pillar. And the path you want, if you notice the two pillars on the outside will not get you up to Kether, which will get you up to the higher realms of Ensof and Ensof-Or and all that. But if you stick to the middle pillar, Tiferet specifically is said to be Christ. That middle pillar will get you, and then right through Da'at, which is like our internal self. It's very mystical. And if you're looking at the new 12 tree of life, which I prefer, Da'at is no longer hidden. It's out in the open, which it should be, because that's our inner subconscious self brought forward. And that's why in the olden days, I can almost see why it was hidden. But nowadays, I love the 12 tree of life symbology that Ashiana Dean brought us. But I think a lot of us can see that it resonates with us completely. So in that, the middle pillar is Christ. And then when you think about it, in this age of Aquarius, how we are all going to become, or we should aim to become, individuated Christs. Individuated Christ, because the age of Aquarius calls us for individuation. And then what David said the other day sparked that thing of, oh my God, could Lucifer be a bunch of beings? Because Christ can now be a bunch of beings. And then it makes you think, because we have is Yaldabaoth Satan, is the devil Satan. Like there's all these different names for Satan. And I wonder if they're just, we know their energies. So then you come to realize.
No, not yet. We'll have
Just
to we'll have to hold that space for her. We'll have to hold that space for her, and I hope that we're going to be hopping to Dawn next here. But I want to give a shout out to everybody in the chat. There we go. Okay, so you were saying, Diana.
Yeah. So where did I cut off there? So I'm saying that they were all individuated beings and their energy
Individuated
streams
beings.
at the end of the
Yep.
day. And so when it comes to what we want to embody, you don't want to fall into one camp or the other, because just like the tree of life, they won't get you all the way there. And we've talked before about how peak materialism was hit in the 90s, around 93. Peak materialism was hit, and we started heading back towards spirit. However, likewise, the spirit realms are already pure spirit. So that's not our mission. Our mission is the child. Our mission is the middle pillar, and that's our mission is Christ. To be Christ embodied, heart centered. So if you don't know where to start when it comes to embodying Christ, seek your heart center, the heart chakra, but it's more than that. It's an entire space where your God spark lives. And when you bring that online, the whole thing will come into play. You don't even need to worry so much about individual chakras and working on them. If you get the heart spark in line, you are a Christ being, and the rest will just fall into place.
I like that. I dig that. I dig that. What's up, Boo Writers? Thanks for being here, man. Don, what are your thoughts on that as well? What do you think about Lucifer energy and the relationship it has with Christ?
Well, being the newer one of the panel and the newer one to getting into all of this material, I've noticed there's a lot of duality in a lot of the angelics, and they do seem to either be neutral or work for both sides. And as you were talking, I kind of had that Bugs Bunny imagery in my head of like the angel on this side and the devil on this side, but they're actually the same damn thing. They're still both telling you what to do, right? That's the best analogy and visualization I can think of, because we do literally have the connection to all of the divine angelics, and we can tap them for information. So that's what I see is like, okay, yeah, maybe Lucifer's going, do you want to let him go, or do you want to, he's literally both of them in your ear, both of them in your head, right? Because I'm not saying I hear voices in a way that I need medication, but I do have some internal dialogue that I know is not just me in here rattling around sometimes. There's other sources that I turn to for advice within myself, and oftentimes it is, do I really want to go teach him about that, or do I hope you have a good day, sir. So I think there's a little bit of that duality in all of us, and I could absolutely see, if you're only going to see the bad things in what the Luciferian energy does, of course he's evil. But if it's left up to a choice, which it seems like it is, then it's kind of still on the middle, which is us, to make that choice, right?
Absolutely.
And I do want to touch on what you were talking about, Stephen, about the trials and the appreciation. And this is something I don't shy away with. I left home at 15. When I was 16, I did have, luckily, some summer months of homelessness, wherein my residence was a Tim Hortons cardboard recycling dumpster. I have been to the very, very bottom. I have hit that rock bottom. I have put myself there. And it makes me very happy that I live in a single wide trailer that does have a couple of leaks, and I have a pickup in my driveway. So yeah, you do learn to appreciate things. I don't think a lot of us need to take the butt kicking that we have been given to understand these lessons. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes they do seem a bit harsh, but on the back end, most of the ones that I've had, I do appreciate. So.
And I dig that, man. I dig that. And, I think really what happens is a lot of people lose sight of what we call the balance here. And, we talk about how the all is mind, right? Everything ultimately services creation. And, it's a habit of our collective still where we, we try to compartmentalize these things into two absolutes. We try to compartmentalize everything into these two boxes: absolute good, absolute evil. And when we do that, we start to negate the growth we can see from taking both of these boxes and understanding that both of these boxes actually serve as creation. And this is, we're getting into like some higher territory when we talk about this. We're leaving the dualistic mentality behind, because and one of the biggest things that I use to get people to see this is, how many times have you been in a bad situation that has had a super awesome silver lining? I bet a lot of people can find a situation they've had in their lives where, like, yes, something not so great happened, but it opened the door for a lot of these other really great things to occur and to manifest in our lives. And how many times have you had something really good happen to you that had a massive caveat to it? You know what I mean? You can have this really great thing happen to you, but there's this caveat. This good thing can only be good under this circumstance, or, this thing can only work under that. And, ultimately what we come to find is there is a balance of what we would call the good end of the polarity and the bad end of the polarity here. And even if we're going to go into the Bible, there's a lot of instances where, we've seen angels and the divine itself not do such great things in order to open the door for a lot of good things to happen. And we've even come along and seen what you would call like these beings who are more on the negative polarity as demons come in and do not so bad things before, and so this is just something that we have to address as we expand ourselves further on our inward journey with Christ, is understanding that ultimately there's a balance here. While there might be some things that we see and they appear in the polarity of the light, and there's some things that we see that appear in the polarity of the dark, these are two counterparts. They can't exist without the other. So this is just something I want to bring, since we were even just talking about the subject of Lucifer, and everybody was talking with Don, talking about his trials that he experienced, and from what Diana was talking about, how Lucifer, Christ, and Satan could be a potential trinity when we're looking at these energies and how they're expressed in this fashion. This is something we have to consider, here, at least in my opinion. What are your thoughts, Diana?
100%. And they can also be seen as the feminine and the masculine, Lucifer being the feminine and Satan being the masculine. And what you said there about angels and demons, that's like an old occult magic thing, a hermetic magic, that gathering demons was something they would do on purpose, because the more demons you had, you could, like, the laws of polarity, they knew these things, and you could take those demons and turn them into angels that would work for you. It simply required a ritual. So all the demons that we amass on us through our lives, which you could wonder why all of us have gone through such trials, especially early on as children when there was nothing we could do about it. So, or very little. So literally thrown into situations where you can't even put the onus of, oh, could have done better. No, clearly something wanted us to get a lot of demons attached to us, a lot of entities. So you could take those demons and turn them to the light when you do any kind of cleansing ritual. Salt, selenite, sulfur, like you were saying, onks, whatever you want to do, whatever ritual works for you. And then that leads me into what this person here was saying, Jay, the tarot leading you into the false tree of light. I think all of the old modalities, including the limited 10 sephirotes of the old tree of life, because I was a huge Kabbalist once upon a time. It was Sarah that got me out of it when we talked to her after. And because I was going on about Kabbalah the whole time, I was in my Kabbalistic phase then. And she didn't tell me not to believe in Kabbalah. She told me to look up Ashiana Dean, and we did. And Ashiana Dean talks about how the tree of life is a false trap, and you'll be trapped. It's actually 12 plus 15 when you include the hires. And I was like, oh my God. So Sarah did that for me, and just handing out that education. She didn't go, oh, you're in the wrong thing. But it made me realize, and I'm grateful for her to hand us that seed to follow, because it saved me. I threw out all my Kabbalah stuff. I kept the tarot though, because I'm so cautionary with it, because the tarot and Carl Jung believed in the archetypes. Caroline Myss,
Mhm.
which you guys are into now, Dawn and Spinja, they believe in the archetypes because the archetypes are so huge. So all those voices you're hearing in your head, Dawn, and all of us, because I try to convey this to people all the time. Pretty much every thought you think, and I'm getting on the thought form of thinking none of the thoughts are ours. Nothing is ours. We are
Mhm.
simply the chooser, the witness, and we choose which thoughts to go to. And it's little choice after little choice after little choice, making your path along the way, because all those thoughts are not ours. And then the more you choose the higher and the good thoughts, a lot of those negative entities are just going to get bored because you're not a food source and they're going to go away. Some of them change to the light. Some of them don't want to be darkness. Like Ashiana Deans talks about the lizard race in coming into us as well. There's a certain sect of starseeds, which I think pairs with Dolores Cannon's blue rays, how they come in with
Mhm.
darkness. Well, I think that then the lizard's choosing to piggyback with another soul. So you're two souled. And because they want to be good, they want to be in the light, and that rocket shoots their, same with any demon. They don't necessarily want to be evil, just like people that are hobos or whatever, and they're stuck in these dark places. They don't necessarily want to be there, but they're trapped. So what you're saying about tarot being a trap and the Kabbalah, thinking about the old tree, I think everything of the past is not, it doesn't work. Clearly, it doesn't work. The one and only thing that has ever continued to work is Christ. Despite even the Christians bastardizing it and perverting it, Christ still remained. For people like me,
Mhm.
atheist, Dawn raised pretty much without religion too. Like, we
Mhm.
still felt a Christ space, because Christ comes a calling anyways, because Christ is that real. So when we sit back and we sit with the self in the age of Aquarius, in the self, you find that these things kind of bring on a life of their own. And by all means, educate yourself in everything. I have and continue to do so anytime I find something new, because we're amalgamating and creating what's going to work, what is the future. So like when it comes to tarot, you notice there's no dogma with tarot. There's a million sets. You get puppy sets, Harry Potter sets, like any set you want. I do like the Rider Waite, because I do feel that the Hermetics had a ton of gold within it. I'm not firmly a Kabbalist anymore, but I am still team Hermetics for a lot of things. And the Gnostics too, because the Gnostics and Hermetics go hand in hand, right? And even the Rosicrucians, they have so much fantastic information. But unless they still are keeping the gold nugget a secret, I think we know what the Philosopher's Stone.
Oh, jeez.
All right, we're gonna have to hold off Philosopher's Stone real quick. I want to address Jay, and I feel you. No, it does, and this is how we can see, Jay, that our community is being controlled to some degree too. So Jay said, I know Diana will probably bring this up afterwards. He said, I had to stop talking on this. It was pissing people off in the community, and that's because Jay, our community is controlled too. There's control. All right. So Diana, you left off on Philosopher's Stone.
Okay, so yeah, we are the Philosopher's Stone. And exactly, like the more terms we get here, I like what Spin just saying, the more we open up the self, because the all is mind, the seven hermetic principles of the laws of the universe. That's a very good foundational stone. And Jesus talks about make your foundation firm. And he has examples of like when it's not, and even the three little pigs, if you think about it, is that story as well. And you can't go wrong. And they're not dogmatic. This is why I always recommend the book That Kybalion to people, because just simply learning the laws of the universe, that's it. That's just how it works. And when you think about it and you look at everything around you, it 100% lines up. So the evidence is there and there's no dogma. And then you form from there. But then we also like Christ, because Christ, it holds us in that safe space and it brings us through this world and just a way where we can trust and know and be held, because we all want that. This world can feel very gross and dark. It just is, because we're not higher yet. And that's why we want the Christ. But truly, we can do this individuated if we wanted to without Christ. We don't, but you do. I recommend it.
I feel you. Don, what are your thoughts on this, man? What do you think about stepping outside of the dualistic box?
Absolutely. And like Diana touched on there, you're the observer, and I guess you would call it that separation of self. And it was actually one of the most fundamental things that actually brought me back to reality when I was going through the crazy beginning stages of this awakening. Is I basically threw a mantra into my head when I realized everything that was going on is I'm a pilot. This is the most advanced flight suit, I'll call it, I could possibly have in any reality. It is a wonderful biological machine that works in connection with my consciousness. And a lot of us have gotten into the construct mindset that we are this and we are not. We are actually what we're connected to. We're just experiencing this, and we've forgotten that we've came here to have the most positive and productive experience. That's the entire reason we came in or even agreed to this, was to A, get this back on track, and B, to have the most positive experience, to see what it's like to be a biological entity, right? I'm going to paraphrase Frank Castle here. We've been the grass, we've been the rock, we've been the tree, we've been the leaf, he does it a lot better than I ever could, but we came here to experience life, right?
Mhm.
There's some crazy stuff that could go on to, the whole construct being a trap, and I'm not going to sidestep us there, but no, that identification of, being connected and you are not your body is one of the most fundamental realizations I think people can have at any stage of their awakening.
It's a holy
Absolutely.
trinity as well, right? Body, mind, spirit, and you want them to work together, but you're not just the body.
100%. It's facets of our awareness, our consciousness. I do want to bring up something that Jay Skyrunner just said. I wanted to address this. She is awesome and right. The old ways no longer serve us. The portals in, out bodies in the here and now is what we can activate for the new energies. And this is something we've talked about a lot here on Church of True Christ, is that, and when I say this, I don't mean the new age movement. When I say that we are in a new age, I mean that we are actually in a new age, just like we said, Christ within the age of Aquarius, right? So we are in this age of expansion. We are in this age of awareness, and with breaking through to this new age, there are new ways we can access and cultivate our relationships with the divine and Christ. And this is actually Diana and I have actually coined this term as, and plus a lot of people in our spiritual panel, we've coined this term as blue collar spirituality. And so this is what I mean. Now we're getting out of the ways of fundamentalism. We're getting out of the ways of dogma. Now we're starting to see that we can embody these principles and we can bring spirit into matter. We can bring spirit into our everyday life. We can bring Christ and the embodiment of Christ into our everyday life. And this is something we're the frontiersmen and frontierswomen of this right now, this new age. And, we're exploring these new methods. We're exploring these new practices that are showcasing themselves to us. And, we have to explore. We have to be able to branch out. Of course, one of the biggest things that I agree with Diana on is having that foundation in Christ, because when we achieve that foundation in Christ, we have that stability and that security for us to expand ourselves even further, and to take on these new concepts and to go on these different avenues and find these new ways to have our relationship with the divine in Christ. And I still see a lot of the fundamentalists and a lot of the dogmatics even going through what Jay was saying. He can't talk about this stuff in our community, and we're kind of the redheaded stepchildren of our community for talking about this, but we're going in it with stride. And one of the biggest things we have to understand is, dogma and fundamentalism come in many forms. It's not just when it comes to religion and the practice of a spirituality. It can come down to narratives, ideologies, anything, when we look at dogmatic and fundamentalist thinking. So the one thing I want to shout out to Jay about here, at least, is you're doing the right thing. If you're catching the flack, you're doing the right thing. And this is something the divine, I think, shows us in our journey. You know, even when we first embark on our spiritual evolution, right? We deal with the Smith effect. We're catching flack from all of these people around us. And, you know, we continue to move forward and we continue to grow and we continue to evolve. And, you know, we catch flack from people in our communities for maybe opening our minds up to a new train of thought, you know, one that kind of goes outside of, you know, the realms of the egregoric thought of our community at that time. So this is what we have to do. We have to be the brave ones in this. You know, we have to be the ones to have the courage to be disliked at times. And this is true courage in my eyes, and this is walking with Christ, because Christ was a revealer. He was a truth bringer. Christ didn't care if people liked him or not. He was there to deliver a message. He was there to awaken us. So this is something we're going to deal with, guys, especially as we expand ourselves into this new age a little bit further, and we explore these new avenues and these new ideas. And, you know, I was actually catching some flack from somebody on X. I'm not going to mention their name. It was more of a passive aggressive post about what I was posting, but she is also a Christian too, a little bit more on the fundamentalist side. And really all I'm saying, guys, is keep yourself open. You know, as we continue to evolve and we continue to walk with Christ and the divine, these new layers of this spiritual evolution, these new layers, we've talked about layers a lot on the show before. They're going to start showcasing themselves to us. What we thought what could have been beneficial to us may not be beneficial to us anymore. There could be something opening up that services us in this newer age that we're in. Sure, maybe this old format of this could have been beneficial in the old way. Don't get me wrong. But now we are opening these doors to these new layers of remembrance, and we're going to keep opening more and more and more and more of these doors. So that's why we have to remember, we have to explore, we have to have that courage, and we have to walk with Christ when we do this, because we may get disliked and we might get chastised for exploring these new avenues. What are your thoughts, Diane?
Oh yeah, go for it. I don't care. That's I'm a Sagittarius, like too. I'm predominantly Sagittarius, so that's fuel for my fire. I'm used to getting made fun of. That's another thing a lot of us might have found ourselves under, is getting bullied in school, getting bullied at home, getting told we're ridiculous and stupid our whole lives. So fuck them. And we're prepared for this. So now that we have a righteous cause for it, now that we have the solidification of the truth of literal God, which is you, which is me, which is all of us individually, because that's the anthropic principle, or panpsychism, like you like to say. We are God. Everything is existing all at once. You will be the rock, you will be the tree, as Don was saying. You are everything. So give it your all, and to damn what anybody else says to you. Absolutely to damn with all of them. I don't care who they are. You live in your freaking truth no matter what. Boss, parent, wife, husband, dog, it does not matter. Whoever argues with you, that's it. You middle pillar. This is actually your spirit finger, by the way. So you can send this to people with love and light, because that's in mudras, middle finger, spirit. So they were secretly telling us something all along. You need to come alive in the name of Jesus, for real, in the name of Christ, because I am Christ. When we are in our truest to true selves, this is why I stick to Christ. This is why I wrote down, like, all those things I used to learn all the time. I have ADHD, and a lot of us have found we are divergents in one way or another. So holding terms and concepts and exact definitions has never been my thing. I can't do it very well, though I could ace a test if I wanted to, because that's just the ADHD magic. But a week later, it's gone, right? But what never ever left was Christ. What never ever left was the middle pillar. What never left is I am. I am whatever I say I am. And I think Eminem said that once. I am whatever I say I am. And I choose to be a Christ, because to get the middle pillar, to reach through Kether up into the higher realms, into fifth dimension, whatever language, heaven on earth, whatever spiritual language you want to throw on this, it doesn't change the facts that you want, the alignment, the spine, the chakras, the Christ, and that place will bring you to your highest point. So whatever that is for you, because we all have these different things we're going through, jobs, people, because you don't need to say goodbye to everyone you love because you want to do this path. You don't need to go to be a monk in the woods or the mountains like they still do today in Tibet, that kind of thing. You don't have to do that anymore, because what good does that do to bring the grid online everywhere? Sure, Tibet shines as a wonderful spiritual grid, but we need everywhere online. And if I would look up and see where you live, if you live close to dragon lines, ley lines, any activation or energy point, go there and touch your inner Christ space. Not only will you pull yourself online faster, you will also pull the world online faster, because we have a comment here, and love to you, absolutely, because this was the narrative. The mind is evil. No, it is not. You can reprogram it. And and no shock there. They were brainwashing us to make this evil, because they've been using the all is mind power, your mind, vibrations. You make everything, literally everything. And we do it together as a team, but individually, if you wanted to suck it all back in, it's all you. It's easier to think of it as a team. It's less overwhelming. And as a team, we can reprogram our minds individually. Know that you're not alone. All of us here are doing it. We have a consciousness panel that all does it. We know lots of our people on Twitter are all doing it, all here passionately for the message, yet not just some guru that's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's so huge. Like, this is why blue collared spirituality, because no matter what you're doing in life, you are just as much God. No matter what you're doing in life, you are just as much Christ. And when you pull that on, when you turn that on, no, the mind is not evil. It's actually a pleasant, wonderful place to be. Things can still come at you, but inside your mind is clean. They used to try to teach us it was evil because they wanted you to perpetuate it was evil. They wanted you to think sinful thoughts are natural. Do you realize you don't have to think sinful thoughts? You can get rid of sinful thoughts, and not by clenching down and going, don't think that, no, but by going through purifications, by aligning with the Christ. It just happens naturally. You're choosing points. Choose better, choose better, choose better. And next thing you know, this whole thing has been reprogrammed. And sure, you might have problems, but when you look at your problems of today, they would have been your blessings 10 years ago, because you continue and continue to ascend and upgrade.
Absolutely. Don, what are your thoughts on this?
Oh, I just love the synchronicity of this whole conversation, because like not 2 hours ago, Spinja and I were just talking about being the weird kids amongst the weird kids, right? We literally were having this conversation a few hours, like I got home from my split shift and we just randomly started talking about this very subject, right? And it's something as well that requires discernment, because like, yes, we're going to go into some areas that makes people uncomfortable, but there's that balance that you have to be. It's like, okay, am I the weird kid amongst the weird kid, or is this egotism? Do I just think I know more than everybody? Like, there's so much tied into this, because you do start to realize, like, hey, I'm in this community, and it's like, wait, I'm talking about, like Jay was saying, I'm talking about things that make people uncomfortable, or I'm talking about things that get me a YouTube strike, or I'm talking about things that get people angry at me and write mean comments and call me a nasty little man, right? That's fine. That's all part of it. I'm sorry that I can explain it. I saw a perfect meme for this. I can explain it to you, but I can't make you understand it. Right. And I'm not trying to sound like an a-hole when I say that. I'm saying we're just at different places in our spiritual understanding and remembering, and not everybody is going to jive and gel with everything you say right off the hop. That's about my best take on this whole subject.
100%, 100%. I kind of want to crack a joke about what Diana said. Sometimes we want to run out to the mountains and become monks and go meditate on a mountaintop for days on end. But we should, we should. Hey, Raquel, what's going on? Thanks for being here. And but no, we can't. This is a the middle pillar, the middle path is one of courage. And it takes strength, and it takes perseverance to to stay on this middle path, because we see that they constantly try to deter us from this middle path. The parasite class, whomever that you call them, whatever you want to call them, the invisible college, they kind of fall into that as well. But they do. We've talked about this a couple times before, but it bears to be repeated. When we look at what we see in our collective as the acceptable options for faith, and spirituality, we see the two hard ends of the spectrum. We have what I would call nihilistic atheism, which is the atheism that's in our collective today. I wouldn't even really call it true atheism. It's taken more of a nihilistic perspective. And then you also have, so this is one of the acceptable ends of the spectrum, but then you go to the other acceptable end of the spectrum, and you have to be dogmatic. You have to be this fundamentalist in this religion. It has to be Judeo-Christian, and these are the two acceptable paths. So why does everybody turn away from the true Hariscamus? That's what you have to ask yourself when you're guiding your way through this existence, through this collective, and I would even say even in this community as well. Why are we constantly being turned away from the middle path? Because the middle path is the strongest. It is the most courageous path. And with the middle path comes personal sovereignty, personal agency, and walking with Christ on this middle path. So this is something that we want to keep in mind as we go forward in this very strange, interesting world. And, taking from what we heard from Diana, taking what we heard from Dawn, I've caught, one of my biggest things in life, I've always said, is people have either really loved me or they've really hated me. There was never anywhere in between. There wasn't, I just kind of like them just a little bit. It's either been either end of the spectrum. And, a lot of us in our spiritual evolution have dealt with this. A lot of us have been born this way. This is just something I want to relay here. We talk about the awakening process. And this is why I like to use this term. And I know you guys have also liked to use this as well. But at first you awaken, but then you remember. You realize, you have this realization that you have been this way since you've been born. You've always seen the spiritual. You've always perceived the spiritual. You just didn't know what to call it. And then it just seemed that you fell into this. And now you're having this realization and this remembrance of that. So, and that is why a lot of you have experienced these very interesting upbringings that led you to your own personal awakening or your own personal walk with Christ, is because you were being conditioned for that realization. A lot of us chose, I guess you could say, a lot of these instances to occur. Our higher selves are alchemists. This is just kind of the best way to put it. And one of the biggest things that we've seen when it comes to personal alchemy is emotionally intense situations are what lead to transmutation. And I know a lot of us throughout our lives have been through these emotionally intense situations. And some of them have left us with trauma that we're still healing to this day. So that's just something I want to leave with everybody before I hand it back off to the rest of everybody, is you've always been this way, always, and it was just the remembering of that. And take that and run with it.
Yeah, 100%. And there's so many different ways we can learn this that are not dogmatic. Like, for example, so the person that says the middle finger is fire. In the mudra system, the middle finger is spirit, and this is fire. And you think of it lighting a lighter, fire, wind, air, right? Spirit. And then earth, your wedding ring. Earth, and then like a British person would drink their tea, water. And that's just the way that's stuck in my mind. But if you have a different system that says something else, go for it. Because I'm telling you, when it comes to the elements and learning how actual existence birthed itself, you hear every way. You hear fire was first, then this, then that, then the other. Then you hear earth was first, then this, then that, then the other. I think when it comes to the elements, their personalities remain the same. What they do for the world seems to remain the same. And fire is very close to spirit. But you can get every version of the story in how actual creation came about. That's why I don't buy into any creation stories one way or another. And this is how we eliminate dogmas, is we realize we are all learning tons of different stuff. What we can do is at least not make fun of each other for it, which I think everyone's doing here. So thumbs up. Because I've always seen positivity in the closer community of you just naturally gravitate together. That's just what ends up happening, right? And there's usually very positive interactions, right? Besides the odd person that seems to, I've never had that myself, but I've seen you guys have it. Maybe I'm a girl, I'm spared. I don't know, but I had one guy call me a gargoyle once, but that was just in an after. It wasn't during a live. So but we get these things, and I've been called schizophrenic, but who cares? Usually the people that'll come at me in comments, not during a live, which is lucky, but in comments is the dogmatic atheists and the dogmatic Christians. They are both two people in the same camp, and they don't even realize it, because 100%. The only problem that comes in here is dogmas. That's it. Just have no dogmas. It's okay if somebody tells you this is the fire finger when I'm saying it's the spirit. Okay, that's fine. That's beautiful. And that's just the example that's just happening. But like, this is why we get made fun of. This is why people come at us, because you shake their ego. They're like, oh, you're saying something that is not, like, it's too big for them to let it into their reality. So they'd rather tear us down and destroy us versus, honestly, because they could choose to just let it be. They could choose to just walk away. And you find this more in person, because online we do circulate together, and even the comments on YouTube is nothing compared to in person. In person, in school, I was physically assaulted for the things I would say. Like, at home, like, we've all experienced these hardships to build up something, like, because there can also be multiple reasons why things happen to us. There could have actually been demons trying to stop us. But likewise, those on our positive team knew it was going to make us stronger, because choice points. There's so many versions of reality. There is versions of you, and I'm haunted by them because I'm very tapped into timelines. I can see versions of myself that didn't stop drinking, that's now on pills. I connected with her this morning because I wasn't a pill addict. I never became a pill addict ever. But I had this like connection with older me. I'm like, holy fuck, she's a pill addict now. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, and we just have to like see these come by like a boat in the wind, like on the ocean, and just watch it sail by and just know that somewhere, sometime in some space, there's a version of me that's not going to be alive much longer. But I'm the choice point, and that's all I can do. That's all we can ever do, is choose the highest. And maybe there's a version of me that started choosing higher sooner, and so she's even better and she's even higher. And we are supposed to make congruences. And this is one thing I've even asked Sarah the Alchemist and anybody I can get to answer this question. I've never had someone answer the question. I should ask you tomorrow, Dawn. But like, about these timelines, how physical are they? Because that kind of thing haunts me. How physical are these extra timelines? Or are they just still thought forms playing stuff out like etherically? Or is some physical version of me in that much pain still? Because that haunts me. Like, I want to like rip open a portal and save her and save everybody. But all we can do, because we can get overwhelmed by just what's happening right now in this reality of the poor children and all the awful things that are happening, is just the highest choice point. What can I do right now? What's better? What you were saying before about like, it's not black and white, and they always say it's gray. Well, actually, mixing all the colors together can make white or black. So you have the spectrums right there. And then everything in between is all the colors. So we are so infinite in our, that's another thing they didn't want us to know, that we have so many possibilities and potentials that we can always be choosing from. So many things. They wanted us to think our lives were like this. You're going to do this and work and then retire and then die. And then they wanted it so lame, work 9 to 5. The 9 to 5 system, if I knew how to tear it down, I would. I don't do the 9 to 5 system. That's the best I could do. And then I tell everybody to quit their jobs. That's another thing I can think to do. I honestly, let's just say I love the ending of Fight Club. I love that ending.
I like that ending too. I'm with you on that. Don, what are your yes, burn it all down. But Don, what are your thoughts, man?
Well, I would probably, on what Diana was just saying, if you can bring up my lovely partner's last comment. I was going to save it for the show on Monday, and I'll touch on it here briefly. Yeah. No, up one more. Sorry. That is 100% factual. I had a lucid dream where I woke up in a consciousness where I was mid-drink. I have been sober for coming up on 4 years now, and I snapped into that reality and was about 3 beers deep and went, I don't do this anymore. And then I realized I was actually that version of my consciousness's higher self. In that reality, I told me what would happen with the life I'm living now. Quit drinking, quit doing this, quit doing that. And I'm not against drinking. I freaking loved it. And that's the problem, right? But in that reality, I was able to realize that me here was in there. I don't drink, and I can explain it to me better than anybody that this is the way your life will change for the best. And I did, and he stopped. Now, I'll go a little more in depth on that on Monday, but yes, it is completely possible what you were proposing. It is exactly what I've had my butt cheek in.
I've had the same messaging, so we should definitely talk about that tomorrow. That I am my higher self now. I went and I had a higher self person take over and help me do stuff years and years and years ago, and then it hit me now because I was like, "Where is this person?" And it's you. It's me right now. It's who I am right now. I went back and did that. I am the higher self now, and then there's even higher selves helping us. So yes, love that.
We've definitely had some experiences with that. I mean, especially if you're on your spiritual evolution, I wouldn't doubt that you are no stranger to addictions and bad habits. It seems to be something that yes, Raquel, burn it all the hell down. It does all have to collapse. Real quick, I wanted to give a shout out to Jay Skyrunner again, real quick. In Qigong, they are all different. Yes, because in Qigong, you have the elements of wood and metal that actually get added into the mix. So yes, I wanted to give Jay a shout out on that. When we're looking at it from that perspective, you have wood and metal that get added into that. One thing I want to talk about, because Diana brought it up, she's been doing great on this convo today, but I have some clarification I want to add as well. What does it mean to choose and pick timelines? What does it mean to hop timelines? I think a lot of people get confused sometimes when we talk about this topic, and in all reality, it's not super confusing. And I know we're each going to kind of give our own little clarification of this. And I've dealt with the Steve and other timelines before, and that Steve didn't go down such a good road. But what does it mean to hop timelines or access these higher timelines of ourselves? So one of the biggest things I can tell people is look at your choices. And that would be the number one. Are you making choices that are contributing to your evolution? All right. Because as soon as you continue to make these good choices and you continue to walk with the foundation of Christ, and you continue to walk with the divine light in your heart, and you continue to cultivate the energy towards these choices that put you on this path, what's going to happen is your higher self is going to keep opening these doors to these higher and higher timelines through the choices that you make. And some of these choices, even if they're difficult, good choices, we talked about how sometimes, the choices we have to make in our evolution, there are going to be difficult ones. And we shouldn't stray away from making these difficult choices or tackling these difficult choices. But even if sometimes these difficult choices to us that are presented to us can be a test to access one of these higher timelines as well. So you have to look at accessing timelines as utilizing your growth and utilizing your focus and awareness towards your ultimate, most joyful, abundant life and your walk with Christ. Now, you can look at it from the opposite end of the spectrum too. You can actually downgrade timelines as well if you continue to stray away from Christ or the divine. If you continue to make choices that aren't good for your evolution, just kind of like what Don was talking about. If he decided, and I'm glad, I want to say congrats to 5 years, by the way, man, that is freaking monumental. That is awesome. Congrats on that. I saw that in the comment. But that would be like if Don just today, as soon as we got off the show, decided he was going to go crack and destroy a 12-pack. This would be the opposite effect. You would be downgrading timelines. Don would be hopping back into that version of himself that he stopped in that dream, and said, hey, I don't do this anymore. So ultimately, it's when we're talking about timelines, don't let it get hyper complex, guys. It's all about in the choices that you make. And it comes down to the choices are the choices you're making gearing you towards that divine light? Are they gearing you towards walking with the foundation of Christ in your life? And ultimately, if all of these choices that you are making are doing that, you're going to continue to access these higher and higher timelines. What do you guys think about this?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And you stopped drinking in 2020?
Yeah.
Me too. That's so we clearly got the
This
same
is awesome.
wave of whatever came through where spirit was like, enough is enough. Because I'd already been awakening and learning for maybe 10 years before that. But it was always just like never going further, because especially the way I drank. Because I wasn't a healthy drinker. I was at that point I was probably a wino. I was off, the vodka, but no, 2020 came and it was a 100% over and forever. It was just this whole, and even still to sometimes I get this, especially because I loved wine. I get this like never again. And no, never again. Like never again. I sipped a juice once in the fridge that had fermented, and a part of me started going, "Oh, a fermented juice," because that I think it was like I think it turned to alcohol, and I was like, "Oh, am I allowed this? Did God give this to me? Is God giving?" And I had this whole moment with this freaking juice that fermented, because it was this expensive tart cherry stuff you can get. And I was just like, oh my God. I was like, is God telling me I should drink? Am I allowed drinking? And at the end of the day, I had to choose. God didn't come through. I really hoped he would. It was delicious. And I really, really, really wanted it. But no God came through to be like, yes, Diana, have that drink. So I was like, fuck. And I threw it out. I'm like, not even this. Nope, nothing. Never. It's over forever. And it just is what it is, because there's just certain things that are just not going to do you well. And maybe some people can have a healthy relationship with drinking. I don't think so, because the way alcohol works, it disintegrates the spirit. It disintegrates your auric field. So you can't hold your auric field as strong. Same thing as living in a metal building. You cannot have a strong aura if you're drinking. We're thinking.
Oh, all right.
Shit.
So I know I'm gonna send Diane. We're all gonna pitch in, and we're gonna send Diana a Wi-Fi amplifier. Just but
Yeah.
But there you go. You're back. What were you saying?
Oh, I don't know where I cut out, but I was just asking you if that kava stuff, because that's like a plant, right? That's natural.
Kava.
That kava.
Yeah, kava. So what kava is I call it almost, it's funny. Real quick, I want to address a couple of comments before I go into that. Lee, so self-sabotage. What about self-sabotage? Well, take that term. You look at self-sabotage, right? You are knowingly sabotaging yourself. You are aware that you are sabotaging yourself, and that is, you make the choice to sabotage yourself. So if you are making that conscious decision to sabotage yourself, yes, you are. That is making a poor choice. And sometimes, excuse the dogs, my wife just got home, but that is what it comes down to with self-sabotage, is you're making the choice to sabotage yourself. So yes, you don't want to make that choice, man. And I know sometimes we can maybe, we're like, this is too good to be true. Something has to be wrong. And that's like, the trauma pattern, that's something that you have to have awareness of, to know that in your past, in your life, you have had this trauma pattern of when things have seemed good or too good, there's been a route of self-sabotage. Take it from somebody who used to do it, man. You can break free of that. I used to self-sabotage myself all the time. I wanted to address Sam's comment too. I think it's important to acknowledge, though, that we heal in spirals, and if we slip, there's a lesson in there somewhere. Of course, absolutely. And sometimes I think our higher self programs these slips in, and the reason why I feel this way is a lot of the time you'll get this slip, and through this slip, it's like you took like this step backwards, but then you take like 4 steps forward. You realize by revisiting this, maybe this older self or this older habit or this older timeline.
You find soul shards. You left some of you behind.
Absolutely, that it might catalyze and push you further into your evolution, because you revisit this and you get that internal visceral sensation of, oh my God, I don't want to be back here. So like it is like collecting soul shards, as Diana said. But the one thing I want to say about kava, so what kava is, guys, and I would recommend this actually for anybody who is quitting alcohol, because kava itself is not physically addicting like alcohol is. So what kava is, it's a tree in the pepper family. And it has alkaloids in it called kavalactones. And these alkaloids actually work on your GABA system, your gamma aminobutyric acid receptors. They're agonists for that. But I call it pseudo alcohol. And what they do is they take the root and they pound it and they make it into a tea. And you drink the tea, and it gives you a very relaxed, euphoric, and uplifting effect. But to me, at least when it comes to kava's very non-habit forming. Alcohol is like,
well, I think alcohol, there's something to do with you let it go rotten, like what happened with the juice. It's gone rotten. And then you drink that and it does all this stuff. But think about just that premise right there. It's gone rotten.
Absolutely. Exactly. The fermentation. You look at the process of what fermentation is. And even though, fermentation in spiritual alchemy is a good thing, we want to do fermentation.
The middle ground is good when it's, what's it called? When it's sauerkraut. The sauerkraut realm is good.
Yeah, well, that's a different kind. Yeah, different. That's for probiotic and for health fermentation, and of course,
alcohol is sterile, right?
Exactly, 100%. And so yes, I mean, also too, it's you look at alcohol, and I actually kind of, it's funny that you guys say that, because 2020 is when I kind of like put it down for good too. Like that's when I had that DMT experience where I had drinking earlier that day and I decided to do DMT, and the entities were not happy with me for having had alcohol before I had came in there, and decided to mop the floor with me all up and down the spiritual realms. That was, that was an ass whooping that I will never forget. And that's why I decided, once they dropped me off on my kitchen floor, I was like, okay, no more alcohol for Steve at that point. But you look at what alcohol does. And I know there's some people who still drink alcohol. And this is the one thing I'll say about it. There are certain people who it does not affect them spiritually. I've seen it. There are certain people who can imbibe alcohol in moderation from time to time. I'm not one of them. And, and we know that we're not one of them. So that also comes down to that awareness and that choice. But yes, I would recommend kava. And I mean, even Trip in the chat was saying that kava helped him kick heroin addiction. And that's awesome, dude. I want to say, as a former opioid addict myself, congrats on kicking that. That is not something that is easy to kick, especially with how worse it's gotten these days. But nonetheless, yes, guys, when we're talking about alcohol and we're talking about substances, we want to utilize, what helps us spiritually. Maybe this is a good topic to even segue into, because, we know a lot of people here. We all love cherry juice too, Raquel. Where cherry juice is awesome. But, when it comes to the topic of substances, because there's a lot of various different points of views on that when it comes to, the spiritual evolution. Our substances, yep, exactly, Sam. It's about intention. If we use it to numb out, then it becomes the problem. Exactly. So that kind of gets down to what we're talking about here. So substances in the spiritual evolution, of course we live in a world where, alcohol is put on a pedestal, it's promoted, but now we're starting to see a lot of these alternative options come into play. And one of the biggest things I want to say is, I want to go back to Sam's comment. It is about intention. It's about what you're using this substance for. It's about, are you using it for a
I would
spiritual
say
purpose?
it's always hurting your aura. No judgment if you want to do that. I eat Snickers bars knowing it's going to affect me, like not all the time, but that's my thing now. When I need a thing, I go to that and I know it's going to hurt me the next day. So it's like you can still do it, still be spiritual, but know it's going to hurt you, because I don't think I mean, you can call me wrong and that's fine, but I truly believe you're getting hurt by alcohol. It doesn't matter. The intentions are great, and not being an alcoholic, that's fantastic. If you want to choose to do it for fun for one night, go for it. But is it hurting your aura? 100%.
I definitely agree with you, Diana. I'm talking about intention for substances too, like in general, like even if you're using cannabis still, like, or if you're going to use an entheogenic mushroom as well,
Yeah,
or
you
something
could.
along
True.
those lines. Yeah. You
You
can
got
alcohol.
points.
Yeah. But again, because a lot of us in the spiritual community, we use cannabis. All right. How we use cannabis actually is going to be the number one thing I'm going to put out there as well. And a lot of us use entheogenic medicines. So for those of you who aren't familiar with that term, it's psychedelics. It's the actual term for what entheogen actually means, is generating the God within. That's what entheogen means. So, of course, when we've embarked on the psychedelic experience, we've taken things like mushrooms, DMT, LSD, ayahuasca, peyote, all of those things. Those are entheogens. And I'm going to disagree with you, John Paul. And the reason why I'm going to say that, it depends on what it's being utilized for. Okay. If you
I think it could be
are
an enhancer, like things like cannabis, when used correctly. All of the psychedelics are enhancers. If you're using them right, though, they can be. I used to be a bonger. They can 100% be an escapism too. That one, I will say intention, because if you go into it sacred, like a ceremony, if you just like whatever, you don't even have to do a ceremony, but when you do it, you're doing it for sacred reasons, to elevate whatever experience, a walk in the woods or just meditation, or to just make your day more spiritual. That's where that is.
I would agree, and I want to hand this off to Don. I just want to say one last thing and give Don a chance to speak. But it is so it is. It's about even with cannabis. I mean, it's your intention with it. It's same thing with psychedelics. One of the biggest things I kind of knack on with a lot of people in the psychedelic community is they're not doing integration. They're not doing any of the healing that they need to be doing, that the plants are showing them. And that's where I think we begin to traverse into escapism when it comes to psychedelics. You're not taking the lesson that the plant is giving you, and you're not working on yourself before your next experience. You're not integrating the experience you had originally. You are just having the desire to continuously repeat that experience. And that is ultimately, yes, you can lead into escapism with psychedelics. And agreed, John Paul. Let's get your opinion on substances, Don, because since you've been clean off of alcohol for 5 years, like I said, that's monumental. That's awesome. I want to say give Don a round of applause for that, because it is, especially when we're dealing with addictions. But what's your take on substances outside of alcohol when it comes to the spiritual evolution?
Just to close out on the alcohol thing, like I said, I don't hate people that drink. I don't judge people that drink. I do believe it's going to have some effect. And if you can handle it every now and then, by all means, have your fun, eat your Snickers, whatever. One of the most prevalent things that ever stuck out in my mind is I was doing security at a bike show another lifetime ago. And there was a Christian minister that was part of Bikers' Rights Organization, which was an offshoot of, anyway. He got really hammered the one night, and we all kind of went, "You're a minister, you don't drink." And he was a recovered alcoholic, and he's like, "It's a slip. Sobriety lost its priority." And he only did it for the night. But that was his mantra. He knew he was going back to God the next day. He knew he was going back to what he believed in. He knew everything. He had a slip. Sobriety lost its priority for one night in his life. And I think as humans, if you can handle it, you're allowed to do that. Now, absolutely. As far as the other substances, I would go with, I am looking at getting some mushrooms to go on a bit of a journey myself. Lee's in the chat. He knows what I'm talking about. Again, I have to go back to what we feed our minds and what we choose to take in any format And what we make our reality in our hearts is the timeline that we're going to draw in, right? So if you're experimenting with entheogens to learn a higher lesson and find a divine purpose, I believe that's where you're going to be guided to. If you're just doing it to get your rocks off and have a good time, if that mushroom F's you up, you kind of deserved it, right? That's the way I look at it. That's my personal opinion. You can get mad at me all you want. If you're tripping just to trip, then you're probably going to have a bad one. If you're tripping to experience the divine and find your true self, then you're probably heading for the right timeline, because it's about self-discovery and learning who we really are connected to.
I would agree completely. And the one thing I will just let everybody know are these medicines do have spirits, that they are spirits. Okay. And that is why you have to respect these spirits. And if you don't respect them, they will do what they did to me. They will take you to the spiritual realms, and they will mop the floor with you all over the spiritual realms with you, because you disrespected the energy and you disrespected the spirit. So ultimately, man, no, I agree. It all comes down to having that respect, having that awareness. And, we can look at these medicines as tools. And, we've talked about tools on this show a lot before. A tool can be a good thing or a bad thing. It just depends on what we're utilizing the tool for. So if you're utilizing entheogenic medicine to heal yourself, to connect with the divine, to become a better human being, to channel the highest quality human being that you possibly can into this current avatar, and to forge and strengthen that connection, then absolutely, yes, that's different. But if you are just undergoing these ceremonies time and time again, not learning anything from them, just using it as a form of escape from your everyday life, then that's when you're going to piss the spirits off, and they're going to give you a bad time. So ultimately, guys, consciousness is a huge aspect of this reality. We know that these plants have spirits. We know that a lot of nature has spirits too. And so that's something we just have to have a profound respect for when we're utilizing these plants and we're utilizing these medicines in our spiritual evolution. And it's interesting. We've gone kind of all over this today. This is we had a lot
all
of
the way
stuff.
You can pick and choose your individual Aquarian age Christism, because there's so many variations. There's so many variations, and that's beautiful, because we are individually God. So whatever you want to be as God, and you feel that true in alignment, not in some ego takeover where you can think you are, but when you feel in your truthest of truth, that's it.
Absolutely. And I mean, really, it is. This is what I mean, guys. And even going back to what we were talking about earlier, we are in a new age, and in this new age, we're going to have new ways to access the divine. We're going to have these new practices that unfold to us, and this is part of keeping ourselves open as we explore with the foundation of Christ too. Is understanding that we're being presented with this, at least for this batch of humanity, a very strange, unknown, and uncharted territory, and in this very strange, unknown, and uncharted territory, we have to have that courage to be the frontiersmen and the frontierswomen of this new age. And, we're all going to have our different ways of exploring. We're all going to come up with our own unique subjective methods of connecting with the divine. But this is the beautiful part of this whole experience, and this is what adds to the beauty of this experience as a whole, is all of us together combined. Even though we might have these little slight subtle differences, as you know, I'm very yang, Diana's very yin, Don is also
John's
very
the
yang.
child,
John's
the middle pillar.
He's the middle pillar. I dig it. And but ultimately, when we come together, we're all channeling and catalyzing this energy, this Christ, this awakening into this existence. So that is something I definitely, before we wrap it up today, I guess, would want to leave with everybody is drop the dogma, drop the fundamentalism, understand we're in a new age, we're in this new place to explore. Go out and explore. Do it with the foundation from the heart, though. You know, keep Christ with you, keep the divine with you as you explore outwards into this strange, unknown, and uncharted territory. And lay down this foundation with us here, you know, carve a path, another path somebody can potentially walk down in the future. And ultimately understand that we are here to bring heaven to earth. And how do we do that? Through each one of us, and through channeling Christ and the divine into our current avatar. Just as Diana was saying, choose to be a Christ. You know, make that choice within yourself. Thank you, Sophia. I appreciate it. I appreciate it very much. And other than that, that's what I want to leave everybody with. What about you, Diana? What about you, Don?
You can go first, Don.
I'm just going to steal a catchphrase that I heard from somewhere. It was probably a meme, but it was one of the best things that I've discovered lately is quantum physics is where the science of spirituality is hidden. So have a look.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Agreed.
100%. 100%. And it takes you into the self. And that's all we can do. And we can just keep dissecting stuff and unpacking stuff. Because as Stephen said, we're in a new age, and that means discovering. And it's the age of Aquarius, so individuation. So your truth is your truth, and that's where you'll find your Christ. And that's all I have to say.
Awesome, guys. Well, I want to thank everybody here for joining us for another Church of True Christ Sunday ministry. We will be back next week, same time. Don, you joining us next week?
As long as I'm not working a split shift that overlaps, for sure.
Absolutely, man. We'd love to have you again. We want you to be a part of this. It's great to have you here. So yes, we look forward to, hopefully Don will be with us next week again as well. Other than that, guys, you know how we do it here. Stay safe, stay free, but most importantly, stay sovereign, everybody. Have yourselves a wonderful and happy Sunday, and we will catch y'all next week. Take care.
Yes. Goodbye for now.